Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Octagon Outlook here on Line Movement. I am James Lynch. Thank you so much for watching. I've got a really special guest co-host today, one of my really good friends. We were just talking about how this time last year we were in New York having a ton of fun at that UFC card with Nate Diaz, or sorry, not Nate Diaz, Masvidal and Nate Diaz. It was that card. What am I talking about? I got Mike Heck here. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. Mike, how's it going, man? Thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be here. Appreciate you having me. And yeah, like going back through Facebook and Facebook memories and going through all the craziness that happened on those couple of days that I was there. Cause you were there for the whole week. I just came for the last 2 days. That was a very memorable trip. No doubt about it, but happy to be here for the first time, my man. And glad to see you growing and doing all this great work as always, my man.
Good stuff. I owe you another beer next time I go to Boston. Don't know when that'll be because I can't leave the country, but nonetheless, happy to have you here on the program. As always, everyone, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button here on Line Movement. We do the show every week. 1:15 p.m. Eastern time as well. You can find all my good interviews on here. My big ones. I did an interview with Valentina Shevchenko on Friday. You guys can find that here on the Live Movement channel under the MMA interviews playlist so you guys don't miss any updates. All right, let's get to it. UFC Vegas 12. We just had this on Saturday. A really epic main event between Uriah Hall and Anderson Silva. And is Uriah Hall getting the finish in the fourth round over the legend Anderson Silva? I thought Anderson Silva looked pretty good in this fight, Mike. Curious to get your thoughts, but obviously another loss for the Spider in this one and Uriah Hall getting his hand raised. What did you think of the fight?
I thought more about like the build up to the fight and how the UFC presented it more than the actual fight itself, because I was puzzled by the entire thing. You know what I mean? Because how many times did Anderson Silva have to go out and say, I don't think this is my last fight? And then the entire buildup was like a swan song tribute to Anderson Silva in his career. Like, it's like everybody knew it was his last fight except for Anderson Silva himself. And then, like you said, in the fight itself, he did not look like a fish out of water at all in there. He was competitive, and you can argue that he was probably winning that entire fight until he got dropped in the third round. Like, I know one judge gave Silva the first and the second round. The other two gave the second round to Uriah Hall, but you could say that to me and I wouldn't doubt you whatsoever. It's just he got dropped in the third and then ultimately finished in the fourth. The way Dana White acted after the fact, it was like Hall knocked him out in 30 seconds. Like, I didn't really understand the build, and then kind of like the follow-up after saying, with Dana White saying, oh, I regret even putting him in there. He'll never fight for us again. It's not like he got steamrolled. He was very competitive in that fight. So it is what it is. The UFC is going to UFC, but Uriah Hall gets a good win, big staple name on the resume, and onwards and upwards. I'm sure that was a very emotional night for him and a very emotional week for him as well.
It certainly was. Even before the fight got started, him going after the media, I thought was interesting. Always interesting to see that stuff. Glad I was not on that Zoom call, but I do remember him last year at UFC Vancouver giving me the death stare when I said, hey, I think a big storyline going into this is that you're training at Fortis MMA. And he's like, I don't think it's a big storyline. And things sort of got awkward from then on out. But hey, he talked about it in the post fight about how Fortis MMA has changed his career. So I think I'd like to get that back back there, Uriah. But nonetheless, great performance from him. I kind of get the sense that Dana White was saying that because he wants Anderson Silva to stop fighting. I don't think he actually believes that Silva looked like crap, like he was making it out. So that was my understanding. And I also think he doesn't want Anderson to go over to Bellator. One of the interesting things is that, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me here, I believe Silva has, I think, a fight or two left in his contract. So even if he wanted to go elsewhere, I don't think he's actually able to, because he's still being retained by the UFC. But I'll talk about what's next for Anderson Silva in the second here. But do you sort of think Dana was just sort of playing salesman here and saying, look, like, I'm saying this because I don't want you to fight anymore. It has nothing to do with the fact that you lost. I think it's just him overselling it.
Well, if you're going to say it the way you said it, release the man from his contract and let him go somewhere else. Like, it's not Dana White's decision to make. It's not the UFC's decision to make, to decide whether or not Anderson Silva can fight on. It wasn't cool for me. Like, hearing Ain't No Sunshine, like, it gave me chills, but seeing him walk to the Octagon with nobody in the arena, it just didn't feel right to me. So let him go. If he wants to go to Bellator, fine. I'd like to see him fight on New Year's Eve in Ryzen or something like that in front of a huge crowd, get the entrance he wants. He could wear whatever he wants. He can come out to any music. He could dance. He could do whatever he wants to do. Like, that's how his career should end, in some sort of a fight like that, where it's a really big deal with a lot of people watching. And I don't know what the COVID restrictions are over there, but I think his last fight should be something of that nature against a guy, somewhat in the same age brackets, same in, veteranship bracket as well. Him fighting Uriah Hall in an empty arena didn't really do it for me. But listen, it is not Dana White's decision to make. And if you don't want him, let him go and let him do whatever he wants to do.
I agree. As far as what's next for Uriah Hall, a couple, matchups come to mind. You could do, just in terms of the rankings, you could do the Chris Weidman fight. That would actually be a rematch. They fought even before the UFC, so that would be an interesting fight. Derek Brunson is another one that I think still needs an opponent. He's sort of in that mid-range as well. What do you think of those matchups? What do you think is next for Uriah Hall?
I like the Weidman matchup because I think it was Uriah Hall's like 5th pro fight where he fought Chris Weidman on the regional scene. So I'd like to see what that would look like in 2020 or early 2021. I actually I don't, it's not that I dislike the Derek Brunson idea. I just think Derek Brunson deserves somebody ranked around where he's at
Mhm.
or above him after his last couple of wins, especially over the Shabazzy win. I'd like to see them try to rebook that Yoel Romero fight. That'd probably be like the first option for me if they could do it, because I'd love to see how that would play out. But if you want to do Weidman, I'm fine with that as well. You could also do the winner of the Jacare fight as well. If Jacare comes back out on top in that fight, you can rebook that one, or you can do Marvin Vettori. Either works for me, but I think he's got a lot of options right now, which is never a bad thing.
Romero's a great fight. Hall kind of hinted this week, and I even saw an Instagram post that he seems to think that Romero's going up to 205. So I don't know what's going on there. It would be great to get some clarification on that. But either way, I don't think you can go wrong with Uriah Hall in the matchmaking. Let's get to the co-main event. Bryce Mitchell, great performance against Andre Fili, getting the decision in this one. Fili held his own, especially in that second round. But I thought as the fight went on, especially the takedowns, I forget how many. I think it was like 7 total or something like that. But Mitchell looked great in this one, and a step up in competition, which he passed with flying colors. Your thoughts on the performance, then we'll talk about the post-fight stuff, because obviously people are talking about that too. But I thought Mitchell looked great, and this was a good test for him as well.
He's a monster, man. Like, I think we needed to see that test for him. Like, we knew he was talented. We knew he was good. And a lot of people wanted the Ryan Hall fight after UFC 249. I was against that altogether. I wanted the Fili fight. I thought that was the absolute perfect test to see where he was at. And man, did he look great in that fight. Just swarmed him, was all over him, didn't give Fili a chance to breathe. That first round was really impressive. I thought Fili looked good in the second round. I don't understand how 2 judges could give Mitchell that second round, but however you want to score it, that's fine. But Mitchell just comes through in a big way in the third. And this guy is a legitimate problem at 145 pounds. He's not just a guy that you put into the top 15 because, people like him. He's getting very popular. This is a legit top 15 fighter. And I'm excited to see where he goes from here. If you want to do the Ryan Hall fight now, sign me up for that one. But I like Dan Ige, man. Give me some Dan Ige. I think that's the fight to make. But if you want to do Ryan Hall, I am going to watch with bated breath. No doubt about it.
Yeah, Ige was the first name that came to mind. There is that history there. If you remember Ali Abdelaziz coming out and saying, hey, Dan will submit you. I'll give you, I'll pay X amount of dollars. There is a bit of history there. You could bring that back up. And I think rankings wise, it does make a lot of sense with Ige, losing his last fight, but looking, pretty durable in that one against a really tough Calvin Kattar in that one. So I think that's sort of the perfect matchup they could do there. Arnold Allen's also out there as far as an opponent and winning streaks. That would be interesting. Do sort of a prospect versus prospect one. But either way, things are looking really good for Bryce Mitchell. The only thing I'm going to say on the post-fight stuff just quickly is obviously he has his opinions on things. You're allowed as media to obviously critique those, but we got to get away from this whole, he's an idiot, whatever. He might not be educated on the topic. I think, not just media members, but fans, you got to just understand that people get their news from different places. I'm not saying it's an excuse to say things like that, but I think in general, let's educate people instead of just shouting down their throats and saying you're an idiot, whatever. He might not know. So that's all I'm going to say on that. This is not a political show, obviously. And I know we do the election tomorrow, but I kind of saw a lot of the stuff on social media. And it's let's talk about his performance. Who cares about the stuff he said after? I think we should just, it's not like I asked Wayne Gretzky for his advice on, the best NBA players. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be asking Bryce Mitchell his opinions on COVID. So that's sort of how I see that. With Fili, obviously a big setback. I say this in kind of a complimentary way, but also maybe in a way that people might take the wrong way. But I think Fili at this point is your gatekeeper at 145. I mean, this is the second prospect now he's fought that he's lost to, the other one being Sadiq Youssef. Fili's a great talent. He had his moments in this fight, but I think overall he's just not past that contenders level, and that's fine. Maybe he'll continue to do that. Maybe he does turn things around, but I think this fight showed that he's not at that level where he could potentially go and fight for a title on that path, I should say. I think Mitchell sort of showed that. So what do you think of everything I just said there, basically with Fili and also with Mitchell in the post-fight comments?
Yeah, I mean, gatekeeper is such a strong word, but you're probably right about that. I mean, that's probably the best way you can put it. I think this is a pretty big night for Giga Chikadze, and we're going to talk about that later on, obviously. But if Giga goes out and gets another win, I'd love to see what Chikadze can do against a guy like Andre Fili, to see if he's ready for the top 15, which all indications, he looks like he's getting there. I don't know if he's quite a top 15 guy, but he's getting better and better with each fight, and that's always good to see. As far as the Bryce Mitchell thing is concerned, he wasn't asked about it. He took it upon himself to talk about it. Like, the media was done asking him questions. He goes, well, I have a platform, so let me just say what I have to say. And I don't care, honestly. Like, it's his opinion. No. He has the right to say whatever he wants. I don't agree with him, but I mean, he didn't say like COVID was fake or anything like that. He just said, listen, make the masks optional. If kids want to run around in the playground and not have a mask on, like, let them have some fresh air. That's fine if that's what he thinks. I mean, I don't have to agree with him. None of us do. We can all, but yeah, to take his freedom of speech and expression away from him, whether we agree with him or not, it's not really fair to do. That's his opinion. There have been way worse takes from folks in the MMA circle about COVID and this whole thing and politics in general. So whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to stand on a soapbox and try to disagree with the man.
How about Greg Hardy getting a nice TKO victory over Maurice Green in this fight? Hardy looked a little slow in this one. Obviously, he almost missed weight in this fight, but this is a good win for him. Another finish. I had my doubts of whether or not Hardy could finish Maurice Green, even though Green had been finished, but still, he's fighting a guy who's a former Glory kickboxer. I wasn't sure he'd be able to go out there, but Hardy looked good. I mean, this is a guy that I think they'll continue to build up. I think like a Marcin Tybura or some sort of vet next would be a good test. And for Mo Green, I'm sure he'll get another fight, but obviously a very disappointing outcome for him as he now loses another fight by stoppage. Your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, Greg looked pretty good. And to find out that a couple of hours before the fight was going to start, it almost got pulled because he got it. He went into it during his scrum. Apparently, like, things from his past came up. People were trying to, send his name into a downward spiral. I don't really know the ins and outs. I don't think he gave specifics about it, but it was definitely interesting to hear him talk about that. But listen, once he got his feet going and once he started to get comfortable in there, I mean, he dropped Maurice Green pretty hard in that first round. I thought the fight was going to get stopped pretty close after that. Maurice Green's a tough dude, man. Hung on, got to the second round, and the stoppage was a little bit questionable. Like, Maurice still had his wits with him and he was okay, but man, like, the UFC likes Maurice Green. You can tell because look at the matchups he's been getting. They're trying to push him over the top and get him back into that top 15. But for some reason, I don't know if it's mental or what, he just can't get the big win. Like, the Oleinik fight, that fight, the fight in Busan, he couldn't get a win on. Like, they're trying. It just, something's not clicking. He's trying everything. He's tried different teams. He's a good dude, good interview. I don't know. Like, I can't put my finger on it, but when it comes to the big fights and the big opportunities, he just doesn't come through. And good for Greg Hardy, man. Gets a good win. You can think however you want about the man and his past and, all that stuff, but the guy continues to get better in all these fights. And with all that in his mind, that makes it a little more impressive. So I think the fight for me is Greg Hardy versus Tai Tuivasa. I think that's the fight to make. I mean, Tybura, yeah, but Tybura could put him in a boring fight and just put him up against the fence and just kind of hold him there the whole time. But I think with Tuivasa, a pretty popular guy, just snapped a long losing streak, got a big win on a big card. Throw him in there, and if he beats Greg Hardy and finishes him, everyone's going to be doing shoeies over their smelly, disgusting shoes. So there you go. I think that's the fight to make.
Well, I kind of disagree there because I still get the sense that they want Hardy to be something. It's interesting because if Hardy didn't have the past he had, I think it'd be a much bigger deal what he's been doing in the UFC because he's a former NFL player and he's actually having a lot of success in the Octagon. I mean, forget about the Sassoli fight. He won that. Forget about the Inhaler Gate. We were at that card anyways. But and even the Crowder loss was weird. But the only real legit loss he's had was the Volkov fight. And we're talking about a top heavyweight here, a guy who just picked up another nice win a few weeks ago over Walt Harris. So I think Hardy is, it's weird because like this is a guy that had it not been anyone else, if this was any other NFL player, this would be a much bigger deal, the run that he's been on, but unfortunately not. And he only has himself to blame. I'm not obviously defending him.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. And I think I like the Tuivasa fight because I think that's more the kind of matchup the UFC would be willing to put Greg Hardy in as opposed to a Tybura fight. Stylistically, that's not a fun matchup for him. It's a fight he could probably, it's a fight I might even favor Tybura in just because of his style and his ability to be able to slow guys down who are much bigger and don't have the ground game. Tybura's got a pretty decent ground game for the heavyweight division, but if you put him up against Tuivasa, there's no threat of that on the ground. They're going to stand there and throw bombs at each other until one guy falls. So I think for the fan and, putting Hardy in, I mean, they want to give Hardy a little bit of a push. They see something in him. That's why he keeps getting on these main cards, keeps getting put in co-main event spots, got the Volkov fight on short notice. Like, they like him. They want to push him. That's a fight matchup wise, stylistic wise, that I think would favor Greg and just be a fun fight for the fans too.
Well, I respectfully disagree, though, because I think they just got a win for Teixeira. I mean, I thought he was cut. At least there was reports of that he was going to be cut after the last fight. He's had a lot of losses. Australia is a big market for them. They like to build those guys up. I think they got lucky. I shouldn't say lucky, but obviously the Struve matchmaking, it's not like they were expecting, like, you sort of looked at that matchmaking. You're kind of like, okay, well, they want Tuivasa to get back on the winning track, which he did. But now you're fighting Greg Hardy. I don't know if he wins that fight. And to me, you sort of kill another prospect there. To me, the Maurice Green and Hardy fight is almost the same thing as the Tuivasa fight. I'd like to see Hardy get another veteran like a Teixeira. I know Teixeira is boring, and you're right. It could absolutely turn into a snore fest, but at least then Hardy's fighting someone a little bit different. I kind of put Green in the same category as Tuivasa in the sense that they're both kind of up and comers in the sense that I know Green's a lot older, but he's also doesn't have a lot of MMA fights. So I kind of was looking at it from there, but we'll see. We'll see what the UFC does. You might, have a better idea of me in terms of the matchmaking, but I think you keep those two away from each other and you continue to build them up in that division because they don't have a lot of prospects, Mike. So it's like they got to figure out who they want to sort of build up a little bit more than others, but we will see what they decide there. All right, we got more to talk about here. Kevin Holland getting a win over Charlie Ontiveros. Thank God Ontiveros is okay. Obviously a scary moment with the injury in that fight. Holland's 4-0 this year. This guy has played his cards perfectly. If this was poker, he'd be taking all the house money here. He's been doing a great job. Holland's got to get a name after this. I know that this was a replacement with his original opponent, but Holland, to me, you could make a case he's been fighter of the year. What'd you think of his performance over Sideshow Bob?
Treat him accordingly. Sideshow Bob, it's pretty funny. He's just, I mean, he's put himself in good spots. He's been in the right place at the right time, like all year. It's been crazy. Like he said the right things at the right times. Like he's just been in the right spot all year long. It's easy and tough to matchmake for Kevin Holland moving forward because it's easy because he'll fight anybody. He'll fight absolutely anybody. You want him to step in on Saturday, he will. It doesn't matter who the opponent is, but eventually he's going to have to start thinking about like, what are these fights that are going to get me to that next level? He wants the Mike Perry fight. If they could make that happen, I'd love to see it. I don't think they will, but I think that would be a great one for him. I would say it's tough because like a lot of these big names are already booked. So I guess like the best course of action is to keep him ready. I know, Marvin Vettori's got the fight coming up. Get him ready, keep him on the outside. And Jacare, keep him on the outside. If one of those guys falls out, you can slot him in there. He's got history with Marvin Vettori. That's another guy that he really wants to fight. So at least you have him there, but he's in a good spot right now. You can book him something down the road, or you can slot him in short notice and he'll take it. So it's easy and hard to matchmake for him, James, is the point I'm trying to make in a long roundabout way.
Maybe even the Weidman fight might be interesting just to see where Holland's at in that division. You beat a former champ, that's sort of the name he's been looking for. Not that it would do Weidman any favors, and it almost seems like the type of fight Weidman wouldn't take if he didn't want to fight a Marvin Vettori. So we'll see what happens there. But Holland, I mean, this, Mike. We've done how many interviews with Kevin over the years? This guy he's got sort of that great personality, great fighter. You just hope he gets that opportunity where he can get put in a better position where a lot of the fans can really gravitate towards him. But nonetheless, 4-0 in 2020, very impressive on that. All right, the last fight on the main card we got to talk about: Thiago Moises and Bobby Green. I scored this for Bobby Green. I need to go back and watch this one, I think, because I just remember at the time being like, ooh, I don't think Moises won that fight. However, Green did himself no favors at certain points in this fight. Credit to Moises. I didn't think he'd be able to win on the feet, and he did. Your thoughts on the fight, and how did you score this one?
I scored it for Green, but it was close. Definitely not a robbery. Yep. It was that close. I was a little surprised, but I was like, okay, I guess I understand. But big win. I mean, Bobby Green, another guy that was sneaking into the fighter of the year category, looking for his fourth win in 128 days, which is just absolutely ridiculous in the UFC. But Moises gets a big win, and who knows where he goes from here. I think he needs like another couple of wins to start sniffing that top 15, but he's definitely in line for a step up in competition. That's for sure.
Totally agree on that. Let's zoom through the prelims here real quick, and then we'll move on to UFC Vegas 13. Alex Hernandez, great to see him get a win in the Octagon. Looked great. I think the move to Factory X has paid dividends. He just absolutely destroyed Chris Gruchmacher. Huge win for him. Excited for what's next for Hernandez. Adrian Yanez getting the first round finish over Victor Rodriguez, which I pretty much said was going to happen because of, Rodriguez hadn't fought anyone good. Yanez, very impressive. Another guy to keep an eye on at bantamweight. Sean Strickland doing more talking than than I think fighting, but still looked amazing. This guy is crazy. If you guys saw the Line Movement betting show last week, Dan Tom with that awesome story about how Sean Strickland was trying to spar Starbucks baristas on the way through getting his order. So this guy's crazy. I love it though. I thought it was awesome. Good for Strickland getting his first win since in a while, because obviously he was out with the motorcycle accident. I think Jack Marshman, that might be the end of him in the UFC. How about Jason Witt? Mike, I know you're another guy who's followed Jason's career for a while. He dominated this fight against Cole Williams, looked outstanding. Williams missing weight. He's getting cut, but Witt, nice to see him get a full camp and look dominant in that one. Dustin Jacoby, absolutely taking apart Justin Ledet in this matchup. Kind of a tailor-made fight for him. Ledet, this guy's only having to fight killers that he's supposed to lose to. Rakic, Johnny Walker, the list goes on, and Jacoby's the latest, one that's taken advantage of that. So Jacoby looked good. Great to see him get his first UFC win after, I think, 2 attempts already back in his first stint in 2011. And then obviously opening up the card, Miles Johns, great knockout win, getting back on the winning track. He looked outstanding. He's another guy at bantamweight to keep an eye on. Your thoughts just quickly on the prelims, then we'll move on.
Fun fight. I mean, fun night of fights. I mean, just a lot of the favorites won. Miles Johns, a lot of people have been hitting me up saying, well, he grabbed the glove, shouldn't have gotten a bonus, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. Mm-hmm. I thought Jason Witt got the big fat hose job. He should have gotten a bonus, in my opinion. I mean, what else does this guy have to do? The guy didn't even know, he was scheduled for his UFC debut against a really tough opponent and didn't even know until minutes before the fight was going to start that he would actually be able to fight. That's wild. And then he has to, for his second fight where he gets a full camp, takes on a guy who misses weight by 4.5 pounds, and he beat the brakes off of this guy, left him bloody, left him in a heap, and then put him away. I mean, that was as dominant of a win as you can get. How he didn't get a bonus it's kind of mind-boggling in my opinion. I thought he deserved it. No offense to Kevin Holland, but Kevin Holland did what he was supposed to do in that fight. Probably shouldn't have gotten the bonus. I'm glad he did, but the bonus structure just sucks, James. It just sucks. Yeah. Sometimes
they have to quit making it so definitive. If 6 fighters have good performances, they should get rewarded for that. It shouldn't be a limit. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, but Witt should have got a bonus, but he looked great. Yeah. And then Hernandez, again, they like Alex Hernandez. The UFC really likes him. They're invested in him. I think he's on his 3rd or maybe 4th contract with the UFC now. They just keep re-upping him because they like the guy. This is a perfect tailor-made matchup for him to get back on track. And Chris Gritzmacher is a tough dude. No disrespect to him, but Hernandez had the ability and the opportunity to shine here and style a little bit, and he did that and much more. So I think this is his best win overall. The Dariush win is great, but people thought it was kind of fluky. This was not a fluke at all. This is a complete and utter destruction from start to finish. So good on him. I just hope they don't rush him too quickly because you know how the UFC likes to do. People and Hernandez has that personality where everybody wants to fight him. Literally everybody. Even Diego Ferreira, who's ranked 8 or 9 right now, would take the Alex Hernandez fight at the drop of a hat if it came his way. I don't want to see them do that. I'd like to see them just continue to build him up, get him against guys in the top 20 to 30 range, and let him build his way back up to the top 15 in that way. He's basically refreshing. He's starting his UFC career all over again.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. He's a guy to keep an eye on because, like you said, people feel one way or the other. You and I love interviewing him because he's a great at talking. He's an entertaining fighter. And then there's people who think he's disrespectful and rude. That's what you want. You want people to be interested. So you're right. They got to do the matchmaking properly for Alex Hernandez going forward. We'll see what they decide to do there. All right, before we move on to the next card, we talked about Anderson Silva here. And look, I think he put on a good performance. Like you, I thought it was a close fight leading up to that first knockdown in the 3rd round and then Hall finishing him in the 4th. But Mike, unpopular take here. I think it's time for Anderson Silva to hang it up because this is a scenario I see. He's already tied into a contract. The UFC is not going to release him. I don't see that happening. Can you imagine Scott Coker taking Anderson Silva, one of the most beloved fighters in the UFC, over to the promotion? That's not happening. So if your only option is for him to basically stay in the UFC and not go elsewhere, then it's time to retire. The thing is that Silva didn't even look that bad. He probably could hang with some of the guys in the top 10 in the UFC. I think he could fight a Weidman again, and it would probably be an interesting fight. But at 45 years old, Mike, I just don't see the point. I think you're risking any fight going forward with Anderson Silva. He got knocked out in this fight. I know it was a TKO, but still, there's no reason to see Anderson Silva fight anymore at this stage in his career. I was thinking about it watching the card on Saturday. When you're remembering George St. Pierre, you're remembering a guy like Khabib. I know Khabib might end up coming back, but you kind of think of them at their highest point, with St. Pierre especially winning another title. He was very lucky that worked out in his favor because in a lot of other fights, it could be that downfall. But how many fighters do we see lose really badly and it doesn't end well for them? Chuck Liddell, Bisping losing to Gaslam. Like there's so many fights that, you know, you look at these legends in the sport and all you remember them is them losing really bad on the tail end. It's like Michael Jordan when he played for the Washington Wizards. I don't want to see Anderson Silva in a Washington Wizards jersey, so to speak, metaphorically, because I just think it's time for him to hang it up. So I would like Anderson Silva to retire. I'm just a guy behind a camera and a keyboard, but I think it's not, no matter what happens, whether let's say he does get released or let's say he goes elsewhere, I don't see it ending well for him because he is going to get that one opponent where they are going to catch him. You saw his movement was a little bit slower. I think it's time for Anderson Silva to retire. Tell me how wrong I am, Mike Heck.
I can't say you're wrong. Like, I just can't. But like I said earlier, it is not anybody's decision to make but his. If he feels like he can still fight, he should have the option to do that. And this is not Diego Sanchez. This is not BJ Penn. This is a guy who has either fought a who's who or a really tough matchup, or he's been competitive in these matches. I mean, let's not forget this guy a year ago, like a little more, right around 2 years ago, went the distance with Israel Adesanya. Okay. Paulo Costa couldn't do that. Paulo Costa couldn't even get out of the first round. Anderson Silva went the distance. And there is a mystique with fighting this man where it's almost like you don't want to hurt him. You almost don't want to hurt him. It's like an extra hurdle for the fighter to get past. So if he wants to do one more and the UFC won't release him, they should just let him have one more fight. Like, I'm not saying throw him in there with Paulo Costa or anybody like that. Give him like a Diego Sanchez or somebody like that. Give him Damian Maia. Like, give him a fight like that. Like, these are the fights we're looking for. We're not looking for the Uriah Halls. We're not looking for the Marvin Vittori's. We're not looking to propel another 85er at this point. But if you match him up with another legend, another guy who is almost out the door, I have no problem with that. But it is his decision to make. He's not getting absolutely mauled in any of these fights. Like, he's losing. The Cannonier fight was kind of a freak one. The Adesanya fight. Cormier, like, it was a closer fight than most people thought it was, and he took it on like 3 days' notice, and he was competitive in that fight. The Bisping fight, there were a lot of people who thought Anderson won that fight. So, I mean, It's not like he's getting annihilated in any of them. The Derek Brunson one, Brunson got the hose job by the judges on that card, but he was competitive in that one too. So he's losing fights. There's a lot of red marks on his record, but he's not getting creamed in any of them. Like, I don't look at an Anderson Silva fight and think, oh my God, like, please stop. Please, for the love of God, don't ever fight again. I don't look at him that way, but he is 45 years old. And I do agree with you that eventually, if they put him in the wrong matchup, something bad could happen in there, but he's still Anderson Silva, man. He looked pretty good on Saturday. So it's tough, man. It's tough. I get where you're coming from, but there's only one man who can make that decision, and it's not Dana White.
Let's talk about UFC Vegas 13. Really interesting card coming up here. The main event, which has very little meaning now in the grand scheme of things, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we're going to skip the prelims and jump right to the main card. If you go to blitzbet.eu for your Canadian watchers, you can check out the lines on there. Right now, we're going to start in the women's strawweight division. Claudia Gadelha taking on Yan. We'll just say Yan. We'll just leave it at that. Don't want to get butchered on that one. But Yan, yes, is the favorite here at -127. Claudia Gadelha +104. I sort of see this fight that way as well. I do see it as a closer fight because, you know, with Gadelha, she's got that experience, but I really haven't been that impressed with Gadelha over the last couple of fights. She is coming off a win over Angela Hill, but I think in general, basically since Andrade, she really hasn't looked that outstanding in the Octagon. So I feel more comfortable picking Yan here as far as getting the win, and I do agree with the odds. But which way are you going in this one, Mike?
I'm with Yan too. I think she's tailor-made to take that next step. And I feel like this is the right fight to make. I mean, this division is so good. You could have put her up against anybody, but I feel like Gadelha is kind of the right matchup for her to take that next step. Gadelha, let's just throw this out to the world. And I think most of you watching will agree with me. Angela Hill won that fight. She got screwed. No doubt about it. Angela Hill deserved to get that win. Gadelha gets it. And now her prize is fighting an up and coming stud like Yan. I just don't see Yan losing this fight. I think it's competitive. I think it's close. But I think Yan gets a decision, gets it done, and on to the next one for her.
So we agree on that one. How about this next one? The middleweight fight, Ian Heinisch, Brendan Allen. If you guys have been watching this channel, we interviewed both fighters, and interesting fight because both guys were at different camps for this one. Heinisch being at Extreme Couture and Brendan Allen being at Sanford MMA. I think good moves for both. Right now here on Blitzbet, Brendan Allen is the slight favorite at -114. Ian Heinisch, a slight underdog at -108. It's been interesting because I've seen a lot of books where the lines are sort of reversed with Heinisch being the favorite, Allen being the underdog. This is about as close as it gets. A couple of things I'll point out with Allen. Didn't look that great in his last fight against Kyle Dawkins. Now, I know that was a short notice replacement for, actually, interestingly enough, Ian Heinisch, who had an injury. But I wasn't really impressed with that fight. And then the Kevin Holland fight, we were at that one. Holland won that first round. And it was only when Allen was able to get the fight to the ground in that he was able to submit him. That was Allen's debut. The Tom Breeze fight was a flawless performance. But those two other fights, give me a little bit of pause in this matchup. And conversely for Heinisch, huge win over Allen's teammate Gerald Meerschaert in his last fight, finishing him. Other than other than Hamzat Chimaev, there's been only one other guy to finish Meerschaert that quickly, and that's Ian Heinisch. But before that, two setbacks to Omari Akhmedov and Derek Brunson. So I do wonder, him leaving Factory X, I think is a good move. I think him getting different looks at Extreme Couture could pay off here. But I kind of give a slight edge to Brendan Allen only because he's a little bit younger. It's a little bit of a height and reach advantage. And I do think him going to Sanford MMA is actually a better fit for him than Rufus Sport, because he's getting to train with guys that, are more his size. And also he's got Henry Hooft, who was a coach that helped Derek Brunson defeat Ian Heinisch just a year ago. So I'm giving a slight edge to Allen, but if you guys are betting this, I would stay away. It's a coin flip. I don't know how you see this one, but I'm curious to get your pick.
If you're here and you're like, wow, Mike Heck's going to provide these technical breakdowns for you, you've come to the wrong place, because it's not going to happen. Yeah. I pick on my gut and what my mind is telling me at the time. And when you have a fight like this that is so closely matched that it's like a coin flip kind of a fight, I always tend to lean towards the guy with the experience. And Ian Heinisch has had some pretty big fight experience. He's got more life experience than anybody on the UFC roster, for being honest, because that dude's story is unbelievable. I slightly lean Ian Heinisch here just because of that. I think he suffered those losses. He got thrust to the top 15 pretty quickly too in this division. He had some wins. They were fine wins, but they weren't like super impressive finishes or anything like that. He got some hard fought grinding performances and then got thrust into some tough matchups. The Meerschaert fight was kind of just what the doctor ordered for him. That was a crazy fight week for him too, because they thought there was a COVID test. He was going to get pulled, then he was right back in and still delivered a performance like that. So I feel like Heinisch is in a really good spot right now. This is a bit personal between these two guys, which I dig, and it makes the fight even more compelling. But when you have something like that, I tend to lean towards the experience. I know Brendan Allen has more fights on his resume than Ian Heinisch does, but Ian Heinisch has more of those Octagon time, more of those big title fights, and then the life experience too. And not that that makes any difference in a fight, but I lean Heinisch slightly, but I think this is going to be a really good fight.
Moving along to the men's bantamweight division, we have a really interesting fight between short notice replacement Hayoni Barcelos replacing Jack Shore, taking on Khalid Taha. And Barcelos, actually one of the biggest favorites on the card, at least on Blitzbet right now. He is minus 357, the comeback on Taha, plus 275. Not much to say about this fight. I think it's just too much too soon for Taha. He's kind of had an up and down career. Barcelos has looked pretty much unstoppable, including that last win over Sadner Magomedov, which I thought was outstanding. He's a lot older, Mike. I think he's 35. That is a little bit of reason of concern, but he's still performing at a high level. I really like Barcelos in this fight. Am I going to lay 3-1 odds? Probably not. I think it might be a little bit closer than that, but I do see Barcelos going out there and getting a pretty decisive victory. How are you scoring this one?
I'm with you. Again, 3-1 is tough to lay money on, especially with a guy like Taha who has just so much power. He can change any fight with one shot. But man, Barcelos, he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and understandably so. How is this guy not in the top 15? Like, I know 35 is a loaded and ridiculous division, but I mean, you can interchange anybody from the top 10 to the top 20 very easily. Barcelos is a legit top 15 type of fighter. I just feel like Taha's, it's a little too much too soon. I mean, he went in there and beat Said Nurmagomedov pretty convincingly, and that is another guy that everyone's got their eye on at 135. So I think Barcelos gets it done. Not sure if he gets a finish here, but I think this is a dominant win. At worst, it's a sweep of the scorecards.
Getting to the co-main event, we've got Tanner Boser taking on Andrei Arlovsky. If you go on Blitzbet right now, you can see Tanner Boser is a favorite at minus 286, Andrei Arlovsky plus 220. I'm with the odds makers here. There's a reason this is the co-main event. You can tell they're really pushing Tanner Boser. I think they saw the value in him this year with those two finishes. Arlovsky's always been up and down. It was only a couple of fights ago he's knocked out by Rosenstrike. Boser's going to be too fast, too quick. He's got knockout power. You even wanted to throw in a little MMA math in there. Arlovsky goes the distance with Felipe Lins. Tanner Boser finishes him. I think this is Boser's fight to lose. I think the UFC knows that this is probably the best Canadian they have on the roster and someone that they can push. And he's just an interesting guy. I know you've interviewed him, Mike. He's a different bird than what you're going to get with most interviews. So this is a showcase fight for Boser. I think he passes it with flying colors and gets a really good win here. I wouldn't necessarily take him straight up, but maybe the inside the distance prop might be worth a shot if you're looking that way. But who are you picking here?
I go Boser, but I feel like this is the kind of fight that Andrei Arlovski thrives in because everyone's picking against him. Mm-hmm. Everyone feels that this is the Tanner Boser showcase fight. And anytime Arlovski is in a situation like that, he wins a fight. It happens all the time. Like he suddenly becomes this great wrestler who takes you down and can control you can keep you on your back and control you on the ground for 15 minutes. Like who knows what guy's going to show up? I mean, this is what his almost 50th fight, 50th pro fight. The guy's seen it all. Like he's been in there with a lot of guys. So I don't think Tanner Boser is going to be overwhelmed by the fact that he's fighting a guy like Andrei Arlovski. I think it's just going to make him like even more excited and even more focused. But I don't think Arlovski is a guy to sleep on in any fight, especially against a guy like Tanner Boser. Like I think Boser finishes him, but you just never know with a guy like Arlovski. This is a tailor-made fight for him to win. He does it so often, but Boser just got so much momentum right now. It'd be hard picking against him. So I'm going to go with Boser, but Arlovski's more game in this fight than I think most people give him credit for.
There you go. Like that one. We'll see how this one unfolds in the co-main event. And then, of course, the main event, we're finally getting this fight. At the time of recording this, let's hope nothing happens. Third time is a charm, I suppose. Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira. So what was it? Was it Santos who got COVID first and then they postponed it and then Glover got it? Or was it the other way around? I can't remember. Yep. Either way, they both had COVID. So the COVID factor in this fight is equal. We don't have to look at that. But these guys are pretty similar in general in terms of their height and reach. They're almost identical in that way. The only difference is that Santos is 36. Teixeira, I think, is what, 41, 42, something along there. I should probably bring it up before people say he's 40. Yeah, he's 41. So I was right there. Yeah, this is a pretty even fight in terms of, their physical stature. Teixeira having a little bit more experience in the Octagon. Well, actually has 10 more fights. They have Santos is 21-7. Teixeira is 31-7. So just a 10 fight difference there. Looking at the odds on Blitzbet, Thiago Santos is about a 2-1 favorite, -233. Glover Teixeira +190. This is Thiago Santos' fight to lose. I know he had, serious injury and obviously was able to fight through that in the Jones fight, and he actually looked pretty good in that one. The layoff does concern me. But I mean, at some point, Glover Teixeira, the age has got to catch up to him at 41. Like, I know he looked dominant in that fight against Anthony Smith, especially as the fight went on. I think that fight could have been stopped a lot sooner than it was in whatever it was, I think the fourth round. But in general, I think Thiago Santos is the better fighter. This guy has a win over the current UFC light heavyweight champion in Jan Blachowicz. That's not by mistake. This guy is very good. He's looked outstanding since moving up a weight class. I think if we're looking at the two resumes lately, Santos has looked a lot better, in my opinion. The only question is, how is that layoff and the injury going to affect him in the fight? I think if he looks even somewhat close to what he fought, how he fought against John Jones, I think he wins this fight. I think this is his fight to lose. I'm going Thiago Santos, but as I always tell people with Glover Teixeira, you can never count this guy out. This guy's got an iron chin. He can still hold in there in the later rounds. So, don't feel too confident about Santos getting the job done, but it's very difficult for me to pick against Thiago Santos in this fight. Which way are you going in this one, Mike Heck?
What are the odds on that fight again?
It's 2-1. So Santos is about -233, Teixeira +190.
I'm with you, but I think if this fight gets into the third round, this gets really interesting. I think Santos has to do it quickly because, we saw in the Anthony Smith fight, like Anthony Smith looked pretty darn good in those first two rounds, and then Teixeira just took over and got better as the fight progressed. And that's the kind of fighter he is. Even at 41 years old, it's just ridiculous to see him take the punishment that he took in those first two rounds because he got hit a lot. Like, especially in that first round, Anthony Smith was moving around like he was a lightweight, just throwing tons of volume, landing at will. But he weathered the storm. He got Anthony Smith tired, and then he took over the fight. And once he knows that you're tired and once he knows you're vulnerable, that man is a killer, even at 41 years of age. So I think the odds are a little off here. I feel like Teixeira should be getting a little more respect. But if you're looking at this fight and you're just like, man, I want to bet on this fight, I'm placing dog money on Teixeira if I'm going to bet. I'm not going to bet, but that's what I would do. I think Santos gets the win. I think he gets a finish. But if this thing gets into the third round, like through the halfway point going into the championship rounds, man, I think this fight gets really interesting. So Santos, my pick is Santos. I think he gets it done quick. But if he doesn't, I'm really looking forward to seeing what those championship rounds look like.
So speaking of Saturday's main event, I'm going to go on a little rant here, as Dennis Miller used to say. This fight it's great matchmaking. I think this is two of the best light heavyweights you could put together outside the champ in Jan Blachowicz. But unfortunately, this fight has really no meaning anymore because Dana White decided on Saturday to announce that Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champion, will be moving up to fight light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight title. Why are they announcing this now? This makes no sense to me whatsoever. Look, I get that they want to make Israel Adesanya this double champ and propel him to even bigger heights as a superstar. But as a result, you're clogging up two different divisions, and you got a guy in Thiago Santos fighting this Saturday that already has a win over Jan Blachowicz. It seemed like a no-brainer that if Thiago Santos wins on Saturday, you absolutely give him that rematch with Jan Blachowicz because he already holds a win over him. It's not his fault. I mean, he was injured, but there's no reason to push him back because of that injury. It doesn't make any sense there. So there's that. And then I got a lot of crap for this, but I got to mention this as well. Jack Hermanson, what is going on with people? People don't like this guy. People are telling me he's boring. The guy's coming off a huge win over Calvin Gastelum in his last fight where he submitted Gastelum early on, something that Adesanya, that Darren Till, all these other guys could not do. Huge win for him. Yes, he had the loss to Jared Cannonier before that, but if Jack Hermanson beats Darren Till in December, he's going to be 6-1 in his last 7 fights. How is that not deserving of a title shot here? People talk about no contenders. There's your contender. It's Jack Hermanson. And I honestly don't think, and Adesanya is a star, and he could fight a broomstick, and there's still going to be interest from people watching Israel Adesanya fight. But I really don't think, Mike Heck, that Jan Blachowicz is that much more of a draw than Jack Hermanson would be because they're both European fighters. They're not like you could go walk in the grocery store right now in your local grocery store and ask 20 people who Jan Blachowicz or Jack Hermanson are. Most are not going to know. I don't see the difference here. I think you're impacting two divisions as a result. Even if Darren Till was to beat Jack Hermanson, Darren Till's a much bigger name than Jan Blachowicz or Jack Hermanson or any of these other fighters. And then the third thing in this whole thing is Robert Whittaker. Of course, we find out that Dana White did offer the fight to Robert Whittaker. Whittaker says no. But I'm like, what is the rush here? Whittaker just fought recently. He's fought twice this year. Really good win over Darren Till. He talked about being burnt out as a champion. If you know this, why are you rushing him into a fight with Adesanya in March where he's likely going to have to train over the holidays? He can't see his family. He can't do all these other things. So I don't blame Whittaker for turning it down. By the way, idiot fans out there want to call Whittaker scared. Do I need to show you the 2 fights with Yoel Romero to say that this guy's scared of fighting anyone? Like, give me a break. So I don't like this matchup. I get, the incentive for Israel to be a double champ, but if this was John Jones, Mike, if this was something where, this was like a huge marquee fight, then fair enough, but Blachowicz just isn't in that. And he's also just won the title. Why are we giving him a super fight right off the bat? It doesn't make any sense to me. The UFC totally blew this one, in my opinion. And I really just don't think it's fair to guys like Hermanson or Thiago Santos, especially when these fights are about to happen and they've already announced the fight. So not a fan of this. I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for it, but I don't care. You got to count wins and losses in divisions. And Adesanya has just 2 title defenses. Why are we giving him a super fight right now? It makes no sense, in my opinion. Your thoughts on that, Mike Heck?
I hate that I'm right, but I was right about this just because, and Dana White could say whatever he wants. I don't believe a word he says when he says that he offered Whittaker the fight and he flat out turned it down. I don't believe that at all. I think this is and I don't even know if this is like 100% going to happen or not. This could just be Dana White saying, Robert Whittaker, if you want to fight for the belt, you need to, adjust your timeline accordingly. I mean, what the heck? Like, what is going on here? Like, the man has a family. He wants to celebrate Christmas with his family. Then he has a child on the way that's going to be born in January. He's not saying like, I'm not going to fight in 2021. He's saying, wait for March or April and then I'll fight. Like I knew, and this is what I knew would happen to Whittaker because Adesanya isn't going to want to wait till March or April. And then that makes, it makes Hermanson and Till a little more interesting, especially if Darren Till wins because they'll put Darren Till in that fight and there's enough there to build it up. But the plan that they're going to the John Jones fight. They can't book John Jones right now. They just can't justify making it happen because Jones vacated the belt and now his next fight's going to be a 205. No, you can't do that. So what I think they're going to do is they're going to book Jones something else. He'll have his heavyweight debut. And then if Adesanya wins, then you could do Jones. I don't know what the hell they're thinking, but to me, my initial thought was this is a ploy to get Whittaker off his ass, which is not going to work. It's just not going to work. Like Whittaker has done this company a lot of favors. And he's in a place mentally right now where he wants to do things his own way. He wants to not rush into things, not rush into opportunities. If they're there, great. If they're not, I'll wait till it's my time. And that's where he's at right now. So for Dana White to say, we offered him the fight and he said, no, I don't buy it. He probably said, yeah, I'll take the fight. But I said March or April. Wait till March or April, then I'll take it. Adesanya doesn't want to wait that long. And I'll disagree with one thing that you said. It's not giving Blachowicz the super fight. It's giving Adesanya the super fight. Blachowicz just happens to be there. They see something huge in Adesanya, and rightfully so. That's where we're at right now. Don't really love this, but unfortunately, I kind of called this is going to happen like hours after UFC 254 ended, especially after Whitaker's press conference. So here we are.
But here's the other thing you ruin as well. What if Blachowicz wins? You kill the Jones fight. You got Adesanya with a loss in a different weight class. Fans are going to look at him differently because he's going to have a loss. You know, Adesanya is, I think, a 2-1 favorite, just looking at the betting odds that were released over the weekend. Like, I'm picking him to win. But what if Blachowicz wins? We thought Dominic Reyes was going to be Blachowicz. I mean, Blachowicz has been the guy that, you know, Luke Rockhold, I remember when he fought him, people were like, Rockhold's going to win this and he'll fight Jones. Well, that didn't happen. This is the guy to spoil a big fight. And I think it's a bit of a risk here by the UFC as well. And again, I just don't like the fact that Blachowicz just won the title and now he's doing a super fight as opposed to a guy that already has a win over him. Like, what are they thinking? Like, and this whole thing, like, and this is another thing I brought up in a video I did on my channel, but like, you know, I've said for months that the UFC doesn't need to worry about McGregor or Masvidal or, you know, John Jones right now because they're filling up these cards. They're going to fill the cards up regardless. This is one of those instances where I think they do miss those guys because there's no reason to rush Izzy back in here. Izzy fought twice this year. Whitaker fought twice this year. Why do we automatically have to have them fight at a specific date next year? Can you not let them wait a bit? Adesanya just got this deal. Like, could they not promote him a little bit more? I don't know. I just think the UFC is really... they're just making a bad business decision in the sense that it's going to impact two divisions. It's going to like, and I also don't think, and I might be wrong about this, but I don't think fans care that much about the double champ thing. Like, did Nunes get more popular because she won the featherweight title? Did, you know, Cejudo obviously did, but I don't think he was that notable to begin with anyhow. So I just don't think it's worth the risk versus reward. And like I said as well, there is an outside chance that Blachowicz wins this and that kills Adesanya's stock. Whereas if he stayed at middleweight and fought like a Jack Hermanson, for example, if Hermanson won, he probably wins that fight. So at least then you're building him up. But I don't like this whole jump divisions after 2 title defenses thing. Like, this is ridiculous. So yeah, that's my thoughts and everything. I know a lot of people disagree. People call me an Izzy hater. I'm not, by the way. I was the guy on this very channel who said fans were morons for calling Izzy a boring fighter after the Romero fight. I was also the same person who said that Israel Adesanya for years was a contender and people said that he was overrated. And I was on the Izzy train. I picked him against Gaslam. I picked him against a lot of people. So, you know, this idea that I don't like Adesanya, it has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with Dana White and the way he's forcing Robert Whitaker's hand here. And whether it happened or not, it's still ridiculous that we're, you know, already planning for a fight that's going to take place in March. When you have time, what's going on with Rose and Wei Lee? What's going on with all these other headliners? Why are they not booking these fights? They should be worrying more about that than trying to rush Izzy back in there. So like I said, I don't expect everyone to agree, but I think this, you know, the whole thing's just, it's holding up 2 divisions. And are you excited now for Hermanson and Till as much as I was? Not as much anymore because it doesn't matter who wins because they're going to have to fight someone else. Just like Thiago Santos and Teixeira are going to have to fight someone else after this fight because it's just not going to work up time-wise. So I'm not a fan of the double jumping, but I might be on an island here. That's
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Glover Teixeira finishes Thiago Santos? Like, this is a guy who'll have a 5-fight winning streak at 41 years of age, who has absolutely unequivocally earned a shot at the title, and he's gonna have to wait. He's gonna have to wait for what happens with there. And then if Adesanya wins, that man may never get another title shot, no matter how many fights he wins. So. Yeah. I feel for those guys. I get where the UFC is coming from a business perspective. Adesanya is a draw on his own, whatever. It's an interesting fight. Maybe that, I don't know. I don't know. That just, it's a little mind boggling to me, but I'm not surprised it's happening.
And I like the fight. I think it's a good fight. I just don't think you need to do it right now when you got a guy who's got 2 title defenses. That's all I'm saying. So we'll sort of probably good time to wrap things up here on the program here as we end here on an interesting note. Curious to get your guys' comments. Leave me one as long as it's respectful. No haters. Come on, guys. Let's discuss this like gentlemen. Let's keep this pretty civil here in the comments and everything else. But like I mentioned, thank you so much for watching today. We do this show every Monday, 1:15 p.m. Eastern time here on the Line Movement channel. The show is Octagon Outlook. We try and rotate hosts every week. Mike killed it. Mike, let people know where they can get a hold of you. And you got to check out What the Heck every Thursday, right on MMA Fighting's YouTube channel.
That's right. You can find me on Twitter at MikeHeck_JR, probably the best place to find me. I mean, trying to get better with Instagram, but I don't use it. I need to get better at it. A little bit of breaking news for you. Ariel Hawaii just reported Mike Perry and Tim Means is the fight for November 21st. Nice. So good on Tim Means getting that nice opportunity. Yeah, so I do a bunch of stuff for MMA Fighting. Between the Links, probably my favorite show to host. That'll drop tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on MMA Fighting. It's going to be Jed Meshew versus an old friend of ours at MMA Fighting, Mr. Sean El-Shadi. So that should be a lot of fun. Nice to have a fellow bald journalist joining me on the show. So I appreciate that. James, always a pleasure. Anytime, my man. Just let me know, and I'm here for you.
I appreciate that. Even though you're a Bruins fan, this is one of the things we disagree on. We're going to wrap things up here quickly. By the way, I'll get on your Between the Links show one of these days if you give me a little bit of notice. Mondays are usually a little bit busy with the 2 shows, but just wanted to throw that out there. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Line Movement YouTube channel where you will find my best interviews, and also going to be finding this show every week. Also this week, I'm in for Dan Tom this week on the Line Movement Betting Show, so you can catch me there in the host seat with Daniel Levy, breaking down the weekend's events as well. I want to thank Jordan for producing the show and doing an awesome job. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week, 1:15 p.m. Eastern time here on Octagon Outlook. Thanks so much for watching.